Hello everyone, in this video we will share about how we use the logic to build a chain of deduction in daily life. This is our group member which is Gan Kai Sing, Heidi Dan and Kui Po Sing. Our topic is antibiotic resistance. Antibiotic resistance is a condition that bacteria evolve the ability to against the drug designed to kill them. This phenomenon reduces the effectiveness of antibiotics, making infection harder to treat. So, in this video, we are prepared three arguments to build the logical change.
Now let us proceed to first argument. Premise 1. If antibiotics are overused, then bacteria are exposed to selection pressure. Premise 2. Antibiotics are overused. Conclusion. Therefore, bacteria are exposed to selection pressure. First, we need to change into symbolic form before we use the rule of deduction to prove the argument. Let P is antibiotics are overused and Q is bacteria are exposed to selection pressure. Now, we can change the premises into the symbolic form, which is number 1 and 2. Conjunction of 1 and 2, which is P implies to Q and P. According to modus ponens rules, we will get the Q. Thus, our conclusion A is bacteria are exposed to selection pressure. Next, we will proceed to second argument. Premise 1. If bacteria are exposed to selection pressure, then resistant strains survive and multiply. The conclusion in previous argument will be used as premise 2 in next argument, which is bacteria are exposed to selection pressure. Conclusion. Therefore, resistant strains survive and multiply. We do the same thing again. Let Q is bacteria are exposed to selection pressure, and R is resistant strains survive and multiply. Now, we need to change the premises into the symbolic form, which is number 1 and 2, and prove the validity of this argument. Conjunction of 1 and 2, which is Q implies to R and Q. We will get the R according to modus ponens rule. The conclusion B is resistant strains survive and multiply. After that, we will proceed to argument 3. Premise 1. If resistant strains survive and multiply, then infection becomes harder to treat. Premise 2 also uses the conclusion of previous arguments, which is resistant strains survive and multiply. Conclusion. Therefore, infection becomes harder to treat. Let R is resistant strains survive and multiply, and S is infection become harder to treat. And change the premise 1, premise 2, and also conclusion into the symbolic form. Now, we need to prove the validity. Conjunction of 1 and 2, which is R implies to S and R. According to modus ponens rule, we will get the S. So the conclusion C is infection become harder to treat. Now, we will build the logical chain, which is antibiotic overuse will lead to bacteria exposed to selection pressure, and thus resistant strains survive and multiply, which make infection harder to treat. In symbolic form, we will use P implies Q and implies R implies S. After we get the final logical chain, we need to prove the validity of this logical chain by using rules of deduction. The first three statements is get from three arguments, and the conclusion is our final logical chain. Now, we can prove the validity by using rules of deduction. First, conjunction of 1 and 2, which is P implies to Q and Q implies to R. According to hypothetical syllogism, we will get P implies to R. So we need to use conjunction again. Conjunction of 3 and 5, which is P implies to R and R implies to S. According to hypothetical syllogism, we will get P implies to S. Finally, we prove that P implies to S, which refers to overusing antibiotics, leads to infection that are harder to treat. This shows that our final logical chain is valid. Besides from validity, we also need to check the soundness of this logical chain. When we overuse antibiotics, for example, taking them too often, or not finishing a prescribed course, most of the bacteria will be killed but not all. Now, the presence of antibiotic becomes the selection pressure, and only bacteria that are resistant to antibiotic can survive and reproduce. Based on this diagram, we can see that how the overused antibiotics treats to the bacteria. Finally, the population become resistant towards antibiotic at all and make infection harder to be treated. The logical chain are biologically accurate, therefore the logical chain is sound. Thank you.